Today, we're going to be talking about the long-range acquisition forecast. I recently did a poll on LinkedIn here, and I heard from government contractors that one of the things they struggle with the most is finding opportunities. The other is building relationships. And they ask, how can I find opportunities in federal agencies? That's the typical question I get. How can I build relationships and how can I find opportunities in federal agencies? And one of the things that I tell them they need to do is to find long-range acquisition forecasts that are at their target agency and review these for the opportunities that are going to fit well with your company. But once you do that, what's next, right? That's the curiosity in there. A lot of times I hear about people, they get access to the forecast, I see it, but it doesn't go anywhere. And so I'm going to show you today how I look at a long-range acquisition forecast. What's my process for doing that in the agencies that I'm trying to get into? And then what do I do to try to follow that thread through to an actual person, right? It's one thing to see data, and then it's another to talk to somebody about an opportunity. And that goes to something that I really want to drive home is that I'm not looking for data. When I go to the long-range acquisition forecast, I'm not trying to do what we call a data dump, where I pick up a bunch of stuff and I bring it over and go, look, boss, here's all the opportunities in that agency. Look what I'm doing. I'm filling the pipeline. That's not what I want to do. I want to look through that acquisition forecast and find just the gems, the opportunities that I think my company could win, right? And I want to find those and put them into the pipeline. So today's event is training. Yes, it definitely is. But it's also more of the exact process I follow. I literally am following this process. It's the beginning of 2024. I have several customers that I support doing this kind of process themselves. And this is what I teach them. This is what I do with them as I go forward. So I'm showing you what I do with my customers to help them find opportunities that they can pursue and win. Long-range acquisition forecasts are perfect. They're the key to being able to fill your sales pipelines. There's multiple places you can hear about opportunities, but this is one of the best ones when you've got an agency properly filling it out. Today, I'm going to cover down on two things, slides and live demos. So I'm going to go in and look at a long-range acquisition forecast, but I'm going to cover down on first just an introduction of the long-range forecast. I want to make sure I'm bringing you along. If you're earlier in your government contracting experience, I want to make sure I bring you along and help you understand what the long-range acquisition forecast is. And really for some of us who are more experienced, just to remind us, right? And then I want to teach you how to triage a long-range acquisition forecast. I'm going to tell you my process, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the process going through one of the departments, Department of Commerce's forecast. And the last thing I want to cover down is how to pursue an agency based off of what you're seeing in a long-range acquisition forecast. So if I see something I like, how do I keep pushing it past that piece of paper or electronic piece of paper and into the agency? That's what we're going to cover today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for your business. That's what will lead to success. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the Government Contracting Success newsletter. This is our newsletter. We put it out a couple of times a week with a lot of really good information. It's also a great place to go, well, if I didn't see Neil's content, I could come there and he'll summarize it for me once a week. I'll put a lot of our good content right in there. It's always government contracting related content, and it almost always is related to sales. How do I get more money? Over on the right-hand side, if you're looking at my screen, I say to register for training. So first off, thank you for the 100+ people who did register for training. I really appreciate when you do that. It's first off a very easy thank you to us to let us know that you're coming. And then second, it lets LinkedIn know that you value this training. And so they'll say, hey, let me go tell 5 or 10 other people and see if they want to come as well. If they don't get to the live training, they can watch the replay. And then the last thing is, if you come in here more than once, twice, and you're liking it and you're finding value, please invite a friend or two. If each of us are doing that, then we're going to be able to build up a really strong community of people who are giving back and forth. For example, one way you can give right now is if you're open to connecting with others who come into the training, just say, I'm open to connections into the chat. I did a post yesterday. I said, if I made an introduction to you, would you take that call? And I've already had like 225 people or so in the last day say yes. And 2 people said no, but who cares, right? But 225 people said yes. And that's the community that we're in. So invite your friends into this community where the majority of the people are willing to talk and build relationships and network and see how we can help each other. Okay, I want to just start with a long-range acquisition forecast introduction or overview. Let me just share that. One of the things to keep in mind about a long-range acquisition forecast, first off, if you've seen one long-range acquisition forecast, you've seen one long-range acquisition forecast. It really appears that nobody in the federal government does the same thing. They use different formats, they come out at different frequencies, et cetera. There's government sites where you can go there and it's like, oh, this is the central repository, but you get there and there's nothing, there's a few things there and they're not even that updated. And so the government struggles with this. Actually, one thing I was going to say is in the chat, I had put, well, somebody else can do this for me because I can't actually do it on LinkedIn right now. But in the chat, I put a comment and I put the long range acquisition forecast directory that I have. I put it on LinkedIn. It's got, Gus, you can help me out, but I think it's got like 50, maybe 100 agencies. I can't remember the idea, but it's the most complete directory that I know that exists out there. And really all it is a link going back to the agency so you can find it fast. But on a long range acquisition forecast, you usually are looking at 12 to 24 months, 1 to 2 years out. They're trying to put their opportunities, right? Some agencies go out 3, 4, 5 years even, which is awesome. Some agencies like to leave the last 20 years in their long-range acquisition forecast, right? You just get used to manipulating the data, and I'll show you so that you just look at what you want to look at. But generally, it's got a next year out, which is what we're really looking at. Next year, next 2 years of what's dropping. They change across the board. Some people do the long-range, some agencies do the long-range acquisition forecast like it's an obligation. The law says I got to put out the policy says I got to put out a long-range acquisition forecast. So they do, and you can look at it and go, that was a compliance exercise at that agency. They just did it, blah, there it is. And those type of agencies, you can usually tell who they are because they update it annually. And that's crazy, right? And then there's other agencies who update it weekly. I'm not positive, but I think the one I'm showing you today, Department of Commerce, they update it weekly. And basically what they say is we update it in real time. If we've got updates that we can put in there, we're going to do it. And so you've got that range of how frequently they update it. Going back to which agencies love working with small businesses in particular, when they put it out as a PDF format, you know they don't like us. I don't care what they say. If you're giving me data in a PDF format, that's just not nice, right? The right format is either in Excel, so I can manipulate it myself, or like HHS, I think, has this really fantastic tool, and they have the ability to export it to Excel, right? So they love working with industry. They're making it easy for industry to see it. And so there's varying formats. Doesn't really matter. If you can get the data, that's the start. And then some of the fields I'm going to just talk about here, but I'll show you when we get in and actually look at the long-range acquisition forecast. The key fields that you're going to see is the title and description, 2 different fields, but that's the first part, right? You're looking to see, oh, that work looks like it might be us. Then you'll see a value field. This is an important one. And no agency that I have seen has made it easy on us for sorting, but they tend to sit there and say this is like under 250,000, 250 to 500,000, or 1 to 5 million, things like that, right? And so you'll see this value grouping. That's really important when you're thinking about your slam dunk opportunity. If you know the criteria for a slam dunk opportunity, which I probably talk about in a minute, if you know the criteria, one of the criteria elements is how big of an opportunity should be in our pipeline, which is a tough thing for people sometimes. They're like, oh, it can never be too big. Yeah, of course it can be too big. You can have an opportunity that's so big that you have no matching past performance. The government looks and goes, yeah, thanks, no. Appreciate you showing up, right? And so you should be determining how big of an opportunity can we go after. You clearly can't go after $1 billion. Can you go after $500 million? Can you go after 100 million? Really, for a lot of people, you should be going after $1 to $10 million opportunities at most. And so that value is a really important field in the forecast to finding opportunities that fit not just what you sell, but how big you can handle. And then it has RFP dates. These are great for just estimations of when they expect the RFP to drop out there for us to respond. That one's a great field because it instantly tells you, well, how much capture time do I have? Based on that date, I can see whether I've got at least 3 months, if not more. We obviously want more than 3 months for any opportunity that's real. And then they have a POC. The POCs, the key about long-range acquisition forecasts is celebrate the fact that they exist. If the data is not the best, doesn't matter. It's a starting point, right? And the reason I say this is because POCs are like this. Sometimes my favorite thing to do is to call somebody who's on this opportunity to only have them answer and go, what? My name is where? On what? It's like, that's not mine. And I'm like, that's cool. I don't care. Somebody took that opportunity and slapped somebody's name on it and said, Johnny's in charge of that one. Let's put his name, email, and phone number on there. You're going to run into that, but that's no big deal because at least you've got yourself starting down an opportunity. It looks like a fit. You can do capture activity to find the real person who's responsible beyond Johnny. But these are typical fields that you'll see in there. So in here on this field or this slide, I just want to quickly say how I triage a long-range acquisition forecast, and I'm going to go in and show you live. But the first thing you need to do is know what your slam dunk opportunity is. You really need to narrow it down and say, this is what I want to sell. This is what I want to find on the long-range acquisition forecast, because then it makes it easier when you're scrolling down 100 or 1,000 opportunities, right? Understand the way that they format the opportunities within the long-range forecast and how to use that. A tip for you is, and that I like to do, is don't filter. You can look at certain tools and maybe filter out stuff and go, I don't need this NAICS, for example. I recommend you don't do that. If you had to scroll through 2,000 opportunities, who cares? Maybe it'd take you a couple of hours, but if it potentially helps you see an opportunity that was mislabeled in the NAICS code or something that fits for you and it's worth millions, who cares if you spent 2-3 hours going through a couple of thousand? Here's the thing. The next time they drop the forecast, you don't have to worry about going through all of them because you could do just a spreadsheet compare and only look at what's new. And now you're looking at 10 to 50 items. And so don't filter, just browse through. It doesn't take long. And I'll show you how to do that. I like to look at a forecast by sorting by NAICS code, because if they did do the NAICS code correctly, it allows me to go through construction really fast. And my eyes can see the titles go construction, construction, construction. I can move really fast. You'd be amazed how fast you can go through 1,000+ rows on a spreadsheet once you start getting used to it, right? And cruising. What I like to do, what I'm describing, is browse through the titles. You're looking for titles that catch your eye. And when you do this bullet, highlight any possibles, my process is to come down. I look at the title and maybe the description, like a first few words. And if it looks like a possible even inkling yes, I highlight it yellow. If it doesn't, I move on. I don't look at it. I don't look at the row, how big it is, anything else. I'm just trying to highlight a bunch of possibles. And then the second to last bullet is I review those highlighted opportunities. So now I've got 10 or 50 or 100 highlighted ones. I go, okay, let me sort it and look at those. Now I'm looking at it a little more, I'm looking at it slowly, right? And I'm looking at the full description and maybe looking over and seeing any other details to decide whether it becomes an unqualified opportunity. And so when I look at a long-range acquisition forecast, my output, my goal is to create a list of unqualified opportunities. And all this means is that according to the data that's in the long-range acquisition forecast, I have identified, sometimes people use that term, opportunities that look good to me. What those mean to me is that they're unqualified opportunities. A minute ago, they were just unlimited opportunities. Now they're unqualified opportunities. And my next job, not this training, but my next job is to qualify these opportunities. And that's a fairly fast-paced activity. You just need 5-10 things that you do to qualify it to move forward or to throw it out, right? But that's the output of a long-range acquisition forecast. I'm going to go, I'll come back in a second and talk about this. This is kind of captured, but let me swing over to the forecast. So I'm using right here, this is Department of Commerce. And right here, this is the part that I really loved about Commerce, right? The file's updated weekly. And that's just exciting, right? It's exciting that they see this as a tool that they should be using to communicate with industry on a regular basis. And so when we have updates, we'll get them out. We're not just doing this because we have to, we're doing this because we want to engage industry. So kudos to Department of Commerce for doing it frequently. Right here, you can see current forecast. So I'm going to click on it. When I do, it comes up and it looks like this, which is nice. I moved it over into Excel. So let me switch over to Excel just so I can use my own tool. I'm going to zoom in the data in 1 second. But I wanted to point out a couple of things that I do when I get in. the first thing I do is I click right here on cell 3A. And what I want to do is in Excel, I want to freeze. Whoop, I froze the wrong one. I want to freeze the pane. And what this means, in the wrong place. Hold on one second. Freeze, unfreeze. That's where I want to be, 4A. And now I'm going to say freeze pane. And what this means is when I start scrolling down, I'll be able to see, if you look at row 3, I can still see the header. The next thing I want to do is I just want to turn on a filter. Even though I said I'm not going to filter, I do want to turn on a filter just so I can see things. In Excel, I can come over here, hit filter. You can learn how to use your tool. If you notice, I did that, and it did the top row, which drives me nuts on spreadsheets. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to get rid of these 2 rows here. I like cleaning up what I'm looking at so I can see. So my row headers are still there. My column headers, these guys are still there. I'm trying to control my tool to make browsing easy. The next thing I'm going to do is say filter. Let's try this again. This is live, so sometimes you get hiccups. No AI with me. All right, so now I've got these filters. And the reason I like these filters is, let's say I'm looking at organizational units. Just for the fun of it, I could just type in NOAA. I know I got somebody on training today who's interested in NOAA. I don't care about the subordinate offices. I just want to know about the National Oceanic something in commerce, right? And so if I hit NOAA, the bottom left-hand side, and it's really hard for you to see, but it says of the 1,400 opportunities, 992 are NOAA. That's an actual really interesting thing. I'm like, why is there such a huge amount in there? And so that's one kind of interesting thing. I'm going to clear that filter. I'm going to try it one more time with BEA, which is another one. And I only see one thing. So this is pretty interesting, right? So a customer might want to be going into Department of Commerce and into the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And so I'm able to do that filter, and I can instantly see that in this office, here are some interesting opportunities that I'm interested in pursuing. This first thing that I did, it took me literally, let's call it 2-3 minutes because I was screwing up the Excel part. But the filtering out, it instantly told me, even though Commerce has a lot of agencies, it has like 5 or 10 at least subordinate equal size agencies, but NOAA is, I don't know, 80% of the opportunities. That will make me want to go back to especially the other agencies and go, what's going on? How come these guys got 900 and you've got 6 BEA? I could look at the budget and see, et cetera. So let me zoom in really quick because I want to walk you through the fields and tell you just what I look at. So these ones are all pretty straightforward, right? The organization, the office. Let me just highlight this really quick so you can see it. Let me do that. I'll make it bold so it's a little easier to see. So as I'm coming across, right, I can see the office, the organization, and I'm going pretty fast. You can come back and look at this later. But the next one that I see is the title, right? Let me shrink this down a little bit. Let's call this 25. So I've got the title and I've got the description. So I'm going to make these smaller columns. And when I review these in a minute, and you're going to see me scroll through this, when I review it, I don't need to see a ton. Even though the description field could be this wide, I'm saying to myself, it needs to catch my eye and this amount of attention. Otherwise, I'm moving on, right? And it should be able to do that. If I'm confused, I'll look at more data and I'll show you again that. So here's the NAICS codes. As you're going forward, let me do the same thing. I'm going to shrink some of these table widths or column widths. This is a different place. Everybody does it different. This agency, what they do for when they expect this opportunity to come out, actually, I don't even know what year and month is. So just so you know, I'm really good at this. I'm looking at the column going, I have no idea what that means. I mean, is it 5-year contract at a 12-month? I thought it was going to be the year they expected it to come out. And that one means I have to go back and see if there was some piece of data I missed, but no big deal. Because at the moment, I'm just looking for opportunities. Place of performance. If you look at my description for slam dunk opportunities, I tell you, make sure you know your place of performance. If you're in construction, you might say, I can only work in Atlanta or 25-mile radius. Okay, there's your place of performance. That means you can't do Canada or some of these other places, Colorado. For one of my customers, it's CONUS, not OCONUS. OCONUS is outside the continental United States. Here you get into things like type of award. If you click on this, you can see it. But basically, they're set aside to be determined or unrestricted, which to me is a really interesting thing. I'm like, well, where's the 8A? Where's the woman-owned set aside? So this forecast, I'm not seeing it yet. Here's that size standard I mentioned. This is the expected fiscal quarter and fiscal year. So like I said, they've got 22 in here. Let me do 24 and 25. So here's the fun part. Of the 1,400 opportunities in here, only 800 of them are actually in the future. The rest are in the past, right? It's something to keep in mind. I don't need to look at every opportunity from the past. I'm going to clear that filter for 1 second. Okay, so here's the competition strategy. Maybe this is where they're talking about it. Nope. It just says competed or sole source, right? And I would be diving into that sole source saying, did you already determine who the sole source is? Those are kind of good ones. And then here's just whether it's recompete or new. That's always an important one for when we're looking at it. New requirements, we sometimes always get excited. The reason I don't overly like them as much as recompete is because recompete is, let's say, 5-year contract that just happened, and now I just need to win it. A new requirement sometimes just keeps getting pushed to the next month, to the next year. And so, they're both good and bad, but you want to be paying attention to it. So sometimes if it's a recompete, you'll see the contract order, so you can go look at it. And this is what I meant by here's the people. So you've got an email and a person. You don't have a phone number. Just means you got to go find that. And then last ones are, I don't know what they are, and I don't really care at the moment for today's training. So let's go back and look at this. One of the things that I realize is I want to come through here, and I said there's ways I prep the data before I look at it. I'm just tracking on my time. This one I'll do pretty fast. But the first thing I do is sort by NAICS code, right? So I'm going to sort this A to Z. And if this isn't your NAICS code at the top, you're not going to really care. The second thing I want to look at is over here on when they expect this to drop. Did I miss that? Here we go. Estimated on column P. I'm going to get rid of them all and say, just show me the next 2 years. So when I'm looking at this, and I realize I got a limitation on time because I only got 5-10 minutes left here. But what I want to do now, when I'm coming through, and I'm going to shrink these guys because at the moment I don't care which office it's in, so I'm just shrinking them. What I really want to see is these things here, and I can go. This is what I meant by I can go pretty fast. It's a little harder to do with you here watching me, but as I start coming through, there's common things like right here, facility maintenance. I can see it, and I'm quickly seeing all this facility maintenance. And I'm able to skip rows of 10 or 20 at a time when I'm zoomed in a little bit farther out, actually. So I'm able to cruise through here pretty fast and look at these things and decide, what I like, don't like. And I'm going to go through faster just to keep the training going. But as I come down, some of the other stuff I'm starting to see, this is an engineering NAICS. And so this is an interesting one, which slows me down. I have to look at each one. But one that I know that I'm looking at, so let me just cruise up to it. And I will do more training if you're asking me about it. But one that I might look at is 611, right? I'm looking for admin support. And so here's an interesting one. And what I mean when I'm looking at it, then I'm just going to go like this. I like that one. It's admin support. So this NAICS code is admin support, but I don't know what this is, right? That's not really what I'm looking for. And so you have to, the reason I don't like NAICS code is because it's too broad. But when I look at a description or title, it's more keywordy type description in a way that tells me. Here's another one, right? That is office support services. I don't even care what the description is. I could look at it and learn more, but that slows me down. And so what I want to do is keep coming through these and seeing what I see. Here's one at NOAA Fisheries. I don't know what that is, right? It just says communication. So I clicked over really quick. Communication program management support. I'm like, that kind of fits into the description I laid out in my category. As you go forward, and this is a little harder, I'm going to have to pause on this and come back with a second training for more. But I'm looking at somebody like Jennifer Hammond. I'm able to find her information. And if I go back to the slides, I can kind of walk this down. I just looked at that opportunity, and let me skip down really quick. This third bullet from the bottom, I'm finding that Jennifer Hammond's the POC. But when I research it, I realize she's more in this other group and not actually in the group I want to get to. And so the second to last bullet says, well, follow the POC that you hear, that person, and chase them to another POC. Hey, can you introduce me to somebody else? And let me go back to the top of this slide. The reason I say this is the first bullet is about finding an opportunity. I highlighted it once. Then when I looked at it again, I said, you know what? I like this. It's an unqualified opportunity. Let me now start qualifying it. And so the first thing I do is I create a list of people that matter to this opportunity. So I try to find out who's the small business professional, who's the contracting officer or contracting specialist. By the way, COKO, it stands for contracting officer. Verify the program office. So as I'm qualifying an opportunity, I'm verifying that this is in the fish services or whatever that is, right, under NOAA, but I'm seeing it's under fish services. And so I'm verifying the program office and who's doing that work. The reason I have looked for diversity and inclusion, because I had another example I was going to show you and it related to that. But then the next thing is I want to find what is that program office doing? So if they have a diversity plan, I wanted to look at that. If this office has some sort of strategic document, even a fact sheet about our program office, I want to get it and I want to read it, right? By reading it, I can begin to understand who they are. And then the idea is, just to bring this in full circles before I run out of time, is I'm finding an opportunity in the long-range acquisition forecast. I'm beginning to try to find people and website links to their program office where I can do a little bit more research. And all of that is leading to, before I ever call anybody, is to create this outreach plan. When I call the person, I don't want to just say, hey, I'm calling about the opportunity, right? If I do that, I'm doing what everybody else does. 1,000 other businesses, I saw this opportunity forecast. That's not me. But imagine if you called them and said, hey, I was reading your strategic plan. On page 5, it said this. Do you have a second to talk about that? And then once you're in there, you can kind of go towards the opportunity. You don't need to call and instantly talk about an opportunity. The long-range forecast is designed to give you an opportunity you're interested in, and sales is about coming up with all the conversations that will lead to you eventually talking about the opportunity. But you don't need to talk about the opportunity. You need to talk about their problems, their goals, etc. Okay, so I'm blowing through this. I want to end on 12:30. Here's what I want you to remember. In the chat, I put a link, and somebody else hopefully did as well. You'll find the long-range acquisition forecast list for the federal government, every one that we found. If we're missing any, tell me. But go in there for your target agency and download that forecast and then triage it the way I said. Scroll through and browse through all of the opportunities, matching them to your slam dunk opportunity. When you do, you're going to find good opportunities to put into your pipeline that allow you to start doing capture on opportunities that have the best chance of winning for you. Hey, for all of us as we go forward looking at the long-range acquisition forecast, just remember government contracting and long-range acquisition forecast browsing is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.